So while we're waiting, as a bonus for people who are punctual, I'm going to invite us to kind of arrive, because for many of us in this new format, we're now sitting in front of a screen for more time than we're used to. So I would just want to borrow from John Kabat-Zinn's meditation I listened to yesterday, and invite us to embody a posture that invokes wakefulness and dignity. So whatever that is for you, I invite you to come into that posture for our time together, so that we can also embody and offer for each other some wakefulness and dignity. And that's a good prelude to love, and love in the time of COVID.
Totally, a great prelude. So with that prelude, I think we'll go ahead and get started then. Diana, I'll go ahead and introduce you. We're so privileged today to have Diana with us today to give us our first inaugural online digital culture speaker series. So thank you so much for joining us. Diana is the CEO of Leonardo ISAST, which is it stands for the International Society of Arts, Science and Technology, Arts, Sciences and Technology. Diana is also a member of at ASU now as well. Is it this year, Diana?
Yes, 6 months.
Wow, 6 months with us as a professor of practice in the School for the Future of Innovation and Society and the School of Arts, Media and Engineering here at Arizona State University. She comes to us with a distinguished career in the pursuit of global social justice, cultivating deep expertise and extensive networks in philanthropy and social entrepreneurship, creative arts and publishing, global humanitarian and sustainable development, free speech and digital equity, and international law and human rights. She has extensive leadership experience, including being the founder and president of Global Momenta, the founder, president, and CEO of Fast Forward Fund, the director of foundation and corporate strategy of Human Rights Watch, and she's led numerous arts advocacy campaigns for peace and human rights, working extensively with the United Nations. She's been a Global Catalyst Senior Fellow and Strategic Advisor with the New School in New York City, a Senior Fellow in Venture Philanthropy and International Affairs at Bard College, and Director of the Human Rights Program and an Associate Professor at Hunter College as well. So we're so happy to have her as part of our faculty, and so happy to have her here today to help us lead a discussion on love in the time of COVID-19. So I'll let you take it away from here, Diana.
Thank you so much, Robert.
Wait, one more thing,
yes.
Just ground rules. So everybody please keep yourself on mute. I'll mute you as well if you forget to. But then if you want to speak up, please do. Please be active in the chat, and I'll be able to call on you and moderate the discussion as well. If you're following us on YouTube, go ahead and write something in chat, and I'll be able to relay that message as well to Diana at an appropriate time. Okay, so sorry for the interruption, Diana, and please take it away.
Okay, everyone, thank you so much for being here. You know, I often am struck by the power of invitation and the power of showing up. It always just means so much to show up. And in this time when we can't physically be in the same place together, it's that much more important to connect. And that's really what I wanted to explore together today, how we might socially connect while we're physically disconnecting, physically distancing. And in particular, as part of this digital culture speaker series, how does this give us opportunity and imperative to humanize our digital culture? So I wrestled a lot with whether or not to go ahead with this talk, because I thought, well, who needs one more talk and one more hour in front of a screen when we're dealing with all this stuff? And my topic kept shifting as our context was changing so rapidly. And finally, I landed on love, because I thought, we need this now. I need this. And so we're experimenting, and in true experimental fashion, I'm going to weave in all kinds of things that I might not have in our traditional speaker series on a stage in a theater space, and want to just share some stories and some thoughts and some questions and some poems and some art. So this is my big question. How can we humanize digital culture by socially connecting while physically distancing? And I thank you for being here today. And I thank ASU for inviting me to speak as part of this series. Okay, so I'm trying, there we go. So this was a found art piece from a recent trip to Paris, my old stomping grounds, where it's always lovely to go to Paris, but especially sweet for me because I lived there the first couple of years, was married. So it's a romantic and sentimental to return there. I was there to speak at a conference on art science residencies. And one evening I was at a restaurant and looked up and saw this on the wall. What I do know is we're here and it's now. We're here and it's now, and we're here together. What I did not know when I saw this then 3 weeks ago was that it would be one of the last evenings that Paris would be open for people to gather at restaurants like this. So I've been repeating this to myself as a kind of micro love poem to myself and my family. What I do know is we're here and it's now. That's how we'll begin. I am returning again and again to this question that has been my mantra for the last several years. How can we become more human and more humane? It's what drove me to carry on with my social justice work in different platforms, different formats, looking at a new global agenda through my most recent book, while serving as global catalyst at the New School, and then coming into Leonardo and ASU, looking at how arts, media, and engineering through the school that's hosting this talk, through this over the future of innovation in society, through bringing together art, science, and technology, might humanize us in this time when I've imagined it's critical that we become more human and more humane. Ready or not, this moment has become now. We need to accelerate how we're humanizing ourselves at this moment of crisis. So how will we do this? One way we'll do this is by socially connecting and remembering that we need to socially connect, whether it's virtual or remote. This is what holds us together while we're being kept apart. I was struck and disturbed initially with the language of social distancing, social disconnecting that had come out of our media, our guidelines that we need to socially distance. And I thought, no, we need to physically distance. But if ever there is a time we need to socially connect, it's now. So, oh, okay. So one way, I know my brother was here, he'll appreciate this as the lover of humor. I have a couple, I swear they're no more than 1 minute long videos that I want to share. But this is a little message about why we do need to physically distance. Let's see if this works.
We're not able to get the audio through, Diana.
Oh no. Okay, so if you can't hear, how can we get the audio?
I believe if you, maybe if you turn your computer speakers up, and if it can hear you through its microphone, then maybe it would work.
Okay, we'll try it once, and if not, then you'll go look it up afterwards. Because we all need laugh. Oh. Because we all need to laugh. Okay, let's try this. Oh no.
Hi, I'm Max Brooks.
Are you hearing it?
I'm 47 years old. This is my dad, Mel Brooks. Hey, Dad. He's 93. If I get the coronavirus, I'll probably be okay. But if I give it to him, he could give it to Carl Reiner, who could give it to Dick Van Dyke. Before I know it, I've wiped out a whole generation of comedic legends. When it comes to coronavirus, I have to think about who I can infect. And so should you. So practice social distancing. Avoid crowds, wash your hands, keep 6 feet away from people. And if you've got the option to stay home, just stay home. Do your part, don't be a spreader. Right, Dad? I'm going. Love you.
Okay, you could hear that, right? Okay, good. All right, so we need to physically distance, and go home, but then let's connect with each other and let's share things that make us smile and laugh whenever we can. We need that. So one of the ways that we're offering connections at Leonardo that I invite everyone to join us for, that we're seeing more and more of in different formats, is we're calling coffee and cocktails. So twice a week, Leonardo is hosting free open Zoom rooms that meet our global community of art, science, technology practitioners and thought leaders. And we're doing this in the evenings on Mondays, so we can reach people around the world who can Zoom in with compatibly with that time scheduling, and Thursday mornings for others. So we've had people Zooming in from Singapore and Australia, from London, from Abu Dhabi, from Tel Aviv, from Russia, all over the United States, from Brazil. And it's really exciting to see. At the same time, there's I think a recalibration that's going on with these Zoom encounters. And part of how we're experiencing our human connectivity and spreading the love through these gatherings is it's shifting. So at the beginning of last week, when we came up with this idea and set it up really quickly, others were coming up with these ideas too. And at the beginning of the week, everyone's like, oh my God, that's so great, we really need that. And by the end of the week, people were like, oh, I'm exhausted from all this Zooming. So there's kind of a recalibration we're figuring out, and let's figure that out together. At the same time, I am seeing how much of a thirst and thankfulness there is in community building and rebuilding. And we've been able to generate really substantive, substantial, and sweet exchanges, and sometimes awkward things like, oh, the sound doesn't work. But it's meaningful, and we need those meaningful connections. Yesterday, I was in a gathering with 21,500 people who had registered. There might have been more who showed up, that Wisdom 2.0 hosted, featuring John Kabat-Zinn doing a mindfulness meditation. And there were 1,000 people on Zoom and another over 20,000 on YouTube. Of the 1,000 people on Zoom, say there were 300 and some who had their video on. Many people had their video off. But that meant that when you went to gallery view, you could see your whole screen filled with tiny faces, and you could just swipe, again and again and again. There were dozens and dozens and hundreds of people. And I realized how moving it was for me to be in a crowd, to be in a really large group, that I hadn't realized I was missing the power of that anonymity and that solidarity. So I want to share that as one of the ways we are socially connecting and finding love in this time. So that's possible because of our digital culture. It's our digital technology that's allowing us to stay connecting. But if we only use that technology to be more efficient, or to be more effective in our productivity, we will be missing what we most need right now, which is the humanizing of this experience. And that's going to come from human ingenuity and hope and heart. So with that in mind, I have another video I want to share. Now, I'm going to try this again. If I take off my microphone, can you hear me like this?
Oh yeah, it
Okay.
sounds great.
No more microphone. Okay, so I want to move us to a spot. So wait, but before this starts, I realize that some people may have seen this, but this was such a hopeful, moving moment of how we're humanizing digital culture that I wanted to share this. This is an opera singer who is serenading his neighborhood in Florence while Italy is quarantined. And we're just going to go to the last minute. Let's see if we can hear this. Can you hear? This is the best part. So my favorite part of that incredible piece is when his child runs up to him in the middle of this performance and this moment that to me made what was so hopeful and inspiring and elevating that much more so because it was so real and human. So when we're looking at how we can humanize digital culture, our art science innovation and hybrid creative communities do offer that inspiration as well as very practical and critical insight and pathways to navigate through this time. So I want to share a few more examples of that. So first, from our colleagues in China at the Cronus Art Center, when the pandemic first hit and was not yet called pandemic, in China, there was an exhibit that was going to happen and had to be reformatted. So we were approached at Leonardo together with 10 other organizations around the world by the curator, Zhang Gaga, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing his name, to help support the creation of this exhibit, which is called We Link 10 Easy Pieces, to reference Jack Nicholson, and it pulls together 10 Chinese artists who created artwork online. It's net-based, for-net artwork in the wake of the coronavirus as it was exploding in China. And I just thought this was an incredibly powerful example of how we can mobilize and use technology and art in new ways to humanize our digital culture. Even before this pandemic, we have examples from our own community and at Leonardo, our colleague Joseph Nekvatal, who's I saw recently in Paris, wrote this symphony, which is available free online today, as our numerous works that our community is making available free during this time. And this was created 12 years ago, I think 2006, 2008. And it is a viral symphony with components drawn from around the world, different elements, inspired by and integrating viral theory into making music. This is another example from my own practice in collaboration with my husband and partner, Bill Ayton, of looking at how we can use technology to imagine new worlds and inspire through digital art. In this case, looking at the world as it is, and then holding in our hands through our screens an image of what might inspire us to imagine a new world. This is especially loving and meaningful for me because these hands in these pictures are my husband's and one of my dearest friends who's in Brooklyn. So as I hold these images, I'm holding in my heart the people far away. I can't hold in my arms or hands right now. So we're letting go of a lot in this shakeup, and it offers us opportunity to also at the same time wake up to a new way of knowing, a new way of being that can be exhausting and exhilarating and profoundly disorienting. And that's kind of where we are right now. One of the things that we're seeing in the opera singer's child running into his arms, and I imagine several people on this call right now, is the coming into intersection of our personal and professional spheres. So we have, in working from home, the interference of and integration of children, of cats and dogs that walk on screen. I saw somewhere in a list of tips for working from home, prepare yourself to see someone or be that person who is naked unintentionally on screen with your colleagues at some point. It's just gonna happen. So we're literally being invited into a virtual glimpse of our homes. So we have a virtual entry into our actual homes from a sphere of working and living that was previously separated out. And that's a powerful opening. It's humanizing in this digital format to see us, even if we might have cool backdrops, occasionally we cut through that and we see, oh, right, I'm looking at my people and they're looking at me in my whole sense of my family is here, my home is here, the way that I live when the screens are down is here. And that's a new opening. That's something that we're breaking open to. And we don't know how that's going to play out, but I think it's powerful. We're coming into this place of stillness, potentially. So one of the things that a colleague said to me I found really powerful was that the only way we can't outrun this pandemic. We can only stop it by standing still, by staying in one place. And from stillness, we know we find clarity. So when you think of a lake like this beautiful image, you can imagine a lake that you've seen, or the surface of water when it's agitated and it's rippled with all that texture, and it reflects and refracts all that light shimmering. It's beautiful. It's mesmerizing. But it's very busy, and it's only when it's very still that you can see clearly, as we do in this picture, where we really are. And this pandemic is forcing us into retreat. almost in like a silence retreat, to listen in new ways, to hear and see where we are. But at the same time, I think there's danger in looking at this virus and this pandemic metaphorically in a way that might romanticize it, because this is serious. It's deadly. And I've been drawing from the influence, or sort of early intellectual influence and personal influence for myself, from Susan Sontag's work, 1978, her essay, Illness as Metaphor, and then her follow-up work, 1989, AIDS as Metaphor, in which she looks at cancer and tuberculosis and then AIDS as being ill-served in being metaphor, that as we use illness as a metaphor, we risk not treating it the way it needs to be treated. We risk blaming origins. We risk blaming the victims. We risk fomenting the fears that might be very real and that can distract us from the collaborative effort we need to stay healthy. And that perhaps the healthiest way of either being ill or living with virus is to be very clear and straightforward of what we need to do and how we need to be at this time. And yet, even Susan Sontag couldn't help herself by drawing on the power of metaphor in a way that I find similarly compelling. And she says that illness is the night side of life. Everyone who is born holds dual citizenship in the kingdom of the well and the kingdom of the sick. We traverse these kingdoms, and it makes me wrestle with the question of what it means to be a planetary citizen today. If we have a planetary virus, a pandemic, and we are all citizens of this time and this place is the planet, how do we hold that citizenship? What is breaking down that might break through to a new kind of identity based in collaboration and generosity and compassion? So while we look at what we might be breaking open, I think we have to acknowledge that we also are experiencing collective anxiety at the same time that we are fighting this individual isolation. So it's not enough to use the metaphor, well, we're coming into a retreat and stillness and a beautiful lake and we see everyone's families, and there's actually real anxiety that we need to break through. There's real isolation that we need to counter. And we counter that by humanizing our digital culture. So with that intention, I want to share a poem that speaks to how we move from isolation. Everything is Waiting for You by David Whyte. Your great mistake is to act the drama as if you were alone, as if life were a progressive and cunning crime with no witness to the tiny hidden transgressions. To feel abandoned is to deny the intimacy of your surroundings. Surely, even you at times have felt the grand array, the swelling presence and the chorus crowding out your solo voice. You must note the way the soap dish enables you, or the window latch grants you freedom. Alertness is the hidden discipline of familiarity. The stairs are your mentor of things to come. The doors have always been there to frighten you and invite you in. And the tiny speaker in the phone is your dream ladder to divinity. Put down the weight of your aloneness and ease into the conversation. The kettle is singing, even as it pours you a drink. The cooking pots have left their arrogant aloofness and seen the good in you at last. All the birds and the creatures of the world are unutterably themselves. Everything is waiting for you. At the same time that everything is waiting for us and we are opening to new possibilities, I think there's an unspoken, I wouldn't say counter-side, but experience or aspect of love that we call grief. And we haven't yet named that in this time, this context of COVID-19, because even if this particular pandemic changes and we flatten that curve, and as we pass through, we are being changed by this. And there is grief in what we are leaving behind, even if they may be things we need to release. So while I'm not wed to this graph or the cleanness of this curved line of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's stages of grief, I do know that there are no shortcuts to grief. I do know that we each find our own path of mourning what we need to let go of, even as we're opening ourselves to a new way of being, a new way of knowing, a new way of working, a new way of living, a new way of healing. And these experiences and aspects of grief are part of this time we are in. It's part of how we love. Part of how we love is to acknowledge loss. There is shock, there's denial, there's frustration, there's depression, there's experiment or sometimes bargaining, negotiation, there's decision, there's integration or acceptance. So I invite us to be gentle with ourselves and each other during this time. I'm very thankful of colleagues and friends who were patient with me, and certainly my family, when I've been frustrated and less my best self in sharing that or not sharing that. And when I acknowledged and apologized for having been frustrated a couple days ago, some colleagues, one by one, they sort of said, yeah, that's okay, it's frustrating. So we need to help each other, and we need to be gentle with ourselves, because we're all experiencing this. And we've all experienced this before in other times in our life, these stages. So I can share that in coming towards integration and acceptance to affirmation, I had a great moment several years ago in participating in the walk for the breast cancer cure as a way to commemorate for me the 10-year anniversary of my lumpectomy. At the same time, 10 years before this 39.3 mile walk that I shared with dear friends and thousands of strangers, supported by hundreds of colleagues and family and friends, that 10 years before, I sat in the reception room at Memorial Sloan Kettering for my consult with my surgeon. And although I'd seen her 2 times before and I already had a surgical date scheduled, I turned to my husband before my name was called to go in, and I said with absolute certainty, oh, this is a mistake, I'm not supposed to be here. Just that denial was so powerful. We can't deny our experience of it. So let's be gentle with ourselves as we go through this love in time of COVID. So one of the ways that we're coming together is through these viral choruses and collaborative musical initiatives. So I'm not going to play this for time right now, but I just thought this was awesome. Camden Voices created this virtual choir. Berkeley's College of Music has a virtual choir, and find these and share them online. They are joyful, and it's part of how we humanize our digital culture. Find poems like this wonderful poem by Mark Nepo that begins with, I wish you the ability to breathe after pain, to begin again, though nothing else seems possible. And ends with the wish, I wish you curiosity, to make a boat of wonder and an oar of gratitude. And then with gratitude, as we do come into these quieter spaces, this time of retreat, of staying put, of being still, not running around so much, we can begin to dip into that lake of stillness and listen to what we might be learning. I loved this image of a woman in silent retreat in the gathering of the Leonardo open Zoom room, people coming together from around the world. I was struck by people talking about how sound is changing. We're hearing things differently in this time. There's less traffic. So there's less busyness, there's less static. We're hearing birds in the morning. There's time to hear birds. But a colleague of ours from Brooklyn was also saying she's hearing more sirens than she's ever heard before. One way that we can humanize digital culture and socially connect is by creating states of awe. One thing that we're learning from the science of awe is that states of awe engender generosity, altruism, and a sense of human connection. So I'm fascinated by this whole emerging field, which might be another talk down the road. But for now, let me share my favorite acronym, DFTBA. Thank you, John and Hank Green, young adult novelists who teach us, don't forget to be awesome. I love in that imperative, don't forget to be awesome. It's not a suggestion, it's an imperative, and it implies embedded within that acronym that we already are awesome. So don't forget to be awesome. And what we know from engendering these states of awe, which are caused by conditions that experiences of a sense of vastness, either actual physical vastness like Grand Canyon or the sky or great spaces, or a sense of vastness like being witness to heroic or courageous acts, or the birth of a child. And the other quality of experiences that create a state of awe, vastness, and transcending understanding, something that goes beyond what we can intellectually analyze and understand. It creates this sense of awe, and the benefits are huge. And they include deepening our sense of human connectedness. We feel more connected to each other, and we feel that our self gets smaller. Sometimes it's self-minimizing the self, but I prefer self-transcendence. We kind of, get out of ourself, get over ourself, and are more connected with each other. There's an increase in altruism, generosity, compassion, and gratitude. We need that today. We need that right now. It reduces anxiety, depression, aggression, and even physiological and physical inflammation, and the way that leads to disease and dis-ease. we have from some recent studies recognized that there's universal sound, some vocal outbursts that come from a full range of human emotions. So if I said to you right now, I know everyone's muted, but if you just at home, if I say make the sound of anger, everyone would kind of go something like ah, and oh yeah, you know that's what that is. If I say make the sound of being interested, you might go something like you know, like if someone makes that sound, like I know what that sound is. If I say make the sound of a vocal outburst of sympathy or compassion, you might say, oh. It turns out these sounds are recognized all around the world. And the sound of awe is like this. It's taking a breath. It's that deep breath. It's no coincidence to me that the pandemic we happen to be dealing with right now is of the breath. We need to take breaths as preciously as they are. It's our first and our last, our lifelong companion, the breath. Creating a state of awe is like being in an altered state, and it's like being in a flow state. So some of the scientists working on states of awe have found that even watching a short, this video, which I'll just have you take a look at, but it won't play now for time, is a high definition, what's called time-lapsed film of Yosemite. It's like 4.5 minutes. And if you watch this even just once a month, there are physiological benefits and psychological, emotional, and social benefits that come from just watching something that creates a state of awe. So we know that we are in awe when we experience nature, when we experience art and works of great beauty, and when we experience love. The other thing we know about awe is it expands our sense of time. It makes us, I would say that the scientists in this study comes from business school. They were looking at how might this affect, how might awe make better management decisions. So they found that people have a sense of extended time, like you have more, you feel like you have more time. I would say the sense of awe creates a sense of timelessness. And that affects the way that we act with each other. So I want to just share a final love story with you. And so this is a love story that I've shared before, but not here and not now. But it's one of my favorites. And it comes from, it's a digital love story. So it comes from a moment I had on Facebook when I was scrolling through and seeing all these pictures of, you know, everyone's curated life. And I saw a photograph of my friend who's now in Brooklyn, hopefully safe with her family. And it was a picture of her and her family, the four of them, at this moment of just pure joy. It wasn't particularly flattering of anyone. It wasn't particularly exotic. It was just a moment where they, I don't even know where they were. Maybe they were rolling all over each other in a backyard kind of thing. And I just loved it so much that I went to write a comment, which I don't always do, but you know, I did. I was going to do that. And I just went to put love this, like, I love that as a descriptive. But the digital gods were smarter than I on my smartphone. And they auto-corrected my descriptive love this to the imperative, live thus. Live thus. Imagine if we could live according to that joyfulness, that love that we have with our family, with our loved ones, with ourselves in our most human and humane state. So I want to end by offering you, with that in mind, a love poem. And well, it's a love poem, and I don't know many of you. I can't think of a better time to extend a love poem to you. And I want to dedicate this to my daughter and soon-to-be son-in-law in Mexico, and my parents in Portland, Oregon, and my brothers in Missouri and New Jersey, and all those people whom we're holding in our hearts, even while we can't yet hold in our arms and in our hands. This much I know. I know the sky is above us, always changing. The earth is beneath us, always shifting. And we dwell wherever we are, in between these spaces that hold us, bound in our rightful places. The faces of our children are beautiful. The doors of our homes are unlocked. I have grown, without a doubt, more loving for loving you. My heart beats its in-out flow insistently. We pulsate with life. As long as we live, we are alive. This much I know. I know what we call green depends on the color of grass we see outside. What we call warm depends on the season of sun we feel on skin. What we call fragrant depends on the scent we seek to inhale deeply. What we call sweet depends on the flavors slowly savored on tongue. What we call music depends on the tune of songs we've heard sung. This much I know. I know I've loved you since long before we met, and long after, and even now, no matter where we are between sky and earth, with beautiful children, open doors, and beating hearts. No matter what we call green, warm, fragrant, sweet, music, I know I've loved you. This much I know. What I do know is we're here and it's now. And we're in this together. And I thank you so much.
Thanks so much for that, Diana. It was really, really lovely. If we have, and let's have a little bit of discussion, please, because this is an open to the public kind of environment, if you want to type in the chat, then we can unmute you selectively, and then we can have you ask your question, okay? So by the way, Watson M. Bonanza from YouTube says, hi, Diana. And Jackson says, DFTBA, exclamation mark.
Awesome. That's so great. Hi, Watson. I know who you are. And thank you, Jackson.
Diana says, the other Diana in this, this call says, standing still is not a typical approach in this era. And Alana really appreciated your personal story about being a cancer survivor. I said, I wish my autocorrect gave me profundities. Sally Kitch says, we needed that, Diana, thank you. And Garth says, loved the tenderness of your talk, Diana, thanks. So if you could make a recommendation for all of us, I think, what should we be, what should we do, right? And in face of all of this, and with this wonderful talk you gave, what is a kind of takeaway action that we should do with our lives? What kind of breaths should we take?
Well, thank you for that, Robert. And thank you for all the comments. And I love looking on the screen and seeing all these people, even though most of you have turned off your video, and I'm video shaming you because I love seeing your face. Thank you, yeah, for those of you who have it on. You know, I think what we can do is start where we are. So I think we'll start where we are and start looking at what do we have to offer? You know, I think, and that does begin with the breath. So just how we can be breathing now, you know, by being mindful of our breath and breathing out is an offering. And that is where we start right now. When I've been researching the work on the science of awe, as I mentioned, and one of the things that we're seeing in relatedly is the power of human touch. That's tricky right now. We're not able to touch each other. So one of the things, though, that we're learning from that, and those who are in the health field, or all of us who are in the human business, which is all of us, know very well the power of human touch to extend love and create a sense of calm. So when and express gratitude. So I'm curious how we might metaphorically be touching each other while we can't physically touch each other, because it's such a fundamental way that we extend gratitude. So much so that, oh, I'm forgetting his name, the scientist who I quoted before, Dacker, from Berkeley, did this study, and within half a second of human touch, we can detect gratitude. So if we are reaching out to each other now metaphorically, just saying, hey, thank you for this, or great job, or showing our vulnerability, I need help with this, or I'm frustrated. Lauren saying hearing is a way of touching. That's beautiful. Finding the ways that we can touch each other now, I think, is a way that we can love in this context, and a way that we can be working and collaborating and connecting and co-creating. And if we can find those new ways of touching, it's powerful. So physically, we know just half a second touch, a physical touch, we can recognize as gratitude. By the way, the same study, I thought this was pretty interesting and terrifying and hilarious, was when women were asked to express anger in touch, through touch, with not violence, but through touch with men. The men had no idea what the women were trying to express. And conversely, when in the same scientific experiment, men were asked to convey compassion with touch, the women had no idea what the men were trying to do, which is to say, we're much clearer on expressing gratitude. And we have a lot to learn on how we can find healthy ways to express other things like anger and compassion. So one thing we can do in starting where we are right now is to find ways to express gratitude. But another, and another way I think we can be, what we can be doing now is not just listening to each other, but listening for what's not being said. So listening to the silences, the hesitations, listening to people you haven't heard from, or partners you haven't heard from, organizations, institutions. You know, we are sort of microcosms that are coming together right now in reimagining what our institutions are and are going to be. And some of our institutions are able to pivot and rally and mobilize really fast, and some are not. So how can we be helping each other, whether the institution is higher ed, whether it's a health public system, whether it's a financial system, whether it's your community center, how can we be helping each other? What's not being said? And going back to that first question of how can I offer?
That's really great. Well, Diana, thank you for this conversation that we've been, I think we've all been quite inspired. Does anybody have anything else to add in the comments? I see there's a rich flow of people responding very positively to your talk. So thank you so much. Thank you and the rest join us for the future Digital Culture Speaker Series. But Diana, thank you so much for today.
My pleasure. Be well, be safe, and stay connected.
Absolutely.
Oh, actually, I know while you're still there, can you unmute everyone so we can just say, maybe we can do that aw thing together?
Everybody
Yeah.
was part of
Let's take
Hey.
a breath together.
the other side of that.
Ah,
Thank
thank you. That's great. Appreciate it.
I love hearing your voices, everyone, and seeing your faces and your names.
I'm sorry I couldn't leave it completely unmoderated because it was open to the
Okay.
public. We would have a few detractors, if
That's
you will.
okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Diana.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
That's for you, Joel.
People are just trying to figure out like where they can jump in. It's almost like double. Like where do I want? Everything's online, and people can figure out what. And I don't want to deter people from entering, but I also.
I'll leave this open until people leave, if they want to leave. It's already ended on the YouTube, so it's the
Good.
public stream has ended.